Hi everyone, and welcome back to the distance learning version of Philosophy 1500. Today is Paradox Day, so we're going to talk about the liar paradox. So the liar paradox is a paradox. So what is a paradox? Let's talk more broadly about what paradoxes are. So a paradox is an apparently sound piece of reasoning that leads to a contradiction. So it's an argument where it seems to be sound. So it looks like the premises are definitely true, and it looks like the argument is definitely valid. Every step of the way, we're truth preserving, we're making valid inferences, but the conclusion is unacceptable. The conclusion can't possibly be right. So we've got to give something up. When faced with a paradox, that's a sign that you need to give something up that you believe. Something that got you there. Maybe you're wrong about which arguments are valid, and some arguments that seemed to be valid in fact weren't. Maybe there's some way that the premises can be true and the conclusion can be false and you just don't know what it is yet. Or maybe one of the premises is false. Maybe we were mistaken about what's true. The paradox might be proof that some premise that we believe must be false and must be given up. So when presented with a paradox, we have to give up something. And so the question is going to be, what should we give up? So if you Google Zeno's paradoxes, you'll find examples from ancient Greece where Zeno, who was a philosopher, used these paradoxes to try to show that motion was an illusion. He tried to show motion was an illusion and that we should give up our idea of motion and accept that in reality, nothing ever changes, nothing moves. And so that's not the solution most people take now. Most people think that calculus, or most people I've talked to and read, seem to think calculus solved Zeno's paradoxes. So we don't need to give up the idea that motion is real. But for the other paradoxes that still sort of remain and get talked about, it's not clear what we should give up. And so the liar paradox is pretty simple and straightforward. The liar paradox is just a sentence. And the sentence is, this sentence is false. Right? So that's the paradoxical sentence that we need to look at. This sentence is false. If you remember the omnipotence paradox, that was a question. And the associated argument was meant to show we have to give up the idea of an omnipotent being. That was an error, and we need to give up that idea, the idea that that's possible. In the liar paradox, that's not going to be an option. So we have to give something up. So the liar paradox is the sentence, this sentence is false. And the argument associated with it is about whether the sentence is true or false. Because it looks like a meaningful sentence, right? If I say this sentence is false, that's a meaningful claim. You understand what it means. If I say, for example, you need to listen to the sentence I'm saying right now, you understood what that meant. I can say sentences that refer to themselves, and there's no problem there, normally. And you can say sentences are true or false. That's coherent. If you say, if your friend tells a lie and you say, what they said is false, that sentence they said was false, right? That totally legitimate. Normal thing, happens sometimes. So it looks like to say this sentence is false, that's a coherent, meaningful claim. It's not nonsense, it's not garbage, it's not gibberish. If you say, right, that's gibberish. That's not true or false, that's just noises. And if you say a sentence that isn't quite meaningful, Noam Chomsky is a linguist and gives the example of colorless green ideas sleep furiously. Right? Syntactically, that's a meaningful sentence. Or syntactically, it's a coherent sentence. It obeys the rules of grammar, but it doesn't mean anything. It's not a meaningful sentence. It's not true or false Because even though it's grammatically correct, it doesn't make any claim about the world. It doesn't actually say anything. It's not a meaningful sentence in the sense that it doesn't say anything about the world and it can't be true or false. But the sentence, this sentence is false, is not like that, right? It's not gibberish. It's not noise. It's not a grammatically correct sentence with no actual meaning. It means something. It makes a claim that one specific sentence is false, and that is a real meaningful claim. It just so happens that the sentence that it's talking about is itself. So the sentence says of itself that it is false. So the argument that's gonna lead us to paradox is an argument about whether or not the sentence is true. Because as a meaningful sentence, it has to be either true or false. It's either what it says about the world is correct, and so it's true, or what it says about the world is wrong, and so it's false. Since it's a meaningful sentence that makes a claim about the world, it has to be either true or false. The question is, which is it? So, let's suppose, hypothetically, that the sentence is true. The sentence, this sentence is false, is true. Let's suppose that. Well, then, since it's true, whatever claim it makes about the world must be correct. It must be a correct claim about the world. It's a true claim about the world. But what does the sentence say? What claim does it make? Well, the claim that it makes is that it's false. The sentence says that it's false. So, if the claim that it makes is true, then the sentence must be false. So we assumed, hypothetically, for the sake of argument, that the sentence was true. And if you make that assumption, it turns out the sentence has to be false. Because if it's true, then whatever it says is correct, and what it says is that it's false. So it's false. But that means the sentence isn't true. If a sentence is false, then it's not true. The claim it makes about the world is not correct. That's what it means to be false. So we were wrong when we said it was true. So we assumed, hypothetically, that it was true, and it turns out that's wrong. It can't be true. Because if you assume it's true, then it turns out that it's false. And it can't be true and false. So if it's false, then it's not true, so it can't be true. If we assume it's true, turns out it's not true. Now, let's suppose, hypothetically, for the sake of argument, that the sentence is false. We just found out it can't be true, so the only option left is false. So, the sentence must be false. But that's exactly what the sentence says. That's the claim that the sentence makes. The sentence says that it itself is false. So if we assume that the sentence is false, then what it says, the claim that it makes, is correct. And that means that the sentence is true. The sentence is true because what the claim that it makes about the world, what it says about the world, is right. It's correct. The sentence is false. But if the claim it makes about the world is correct, that means the sentence is true. So, turns out the sentence is true. We assume that the sentence is false, and then it turns out the sentence must be true. Because the claim it makes about the world is that it's false. So if it's false, then it must be true. But you see where we're going with this, right? If it's false, then it can't be true. If the claim it makes about the world is correct, then it can't be false. And if the claim it makes about the world is wrong, then it can't be true. So when we assume the sentence is false and discover by reasoning about what the words true and false mean, when we discover that if we assume it's false, it turns out it's true, that means the sentence wasn't false after all. The sentence can't have been false. But that means it can't be either. So it's a meaningful sentence about the world, right? It makes a meaningful claim about the world, this sentence. This sentence is false. So it must be either true or false. But if we assume it's true, it turns out that it's false. and therefore not true. And if we assume that it's false, then we discover that it's true, and therefore not false. So we've got a paradox here. It can't be true, it can't be false, it can't be both, and it can't be neither. Those are the only options, though. So what do we do? Right? So what do we do? Well, there are a couple different options. Because, like I said, when faced with a paradox, you have to give something up. And there are different options for what to give up here. What most philosophers historically have given up is something called bivalence. The thought that every meaningful sentence that makes a claim about the world has to be either true or false, right? That's called bivalence. The claim that every meaningful declarative sentence is either true or false. It can't be neither. So most philosophers historically have given that up. They've said, okay, the liar paradox shows that not every meaningful sentence is true or false. Some meaningful declarative sentences that make real claims about the world are neither true nor false. Okay, that's weird, but fine. Fine. We give up bivalence. We say that some meaningful sentences are neither true nor false. However, there's something called the extended liar paradox. And that is a version of the liar paradox that is supposed to pose a problem for these philosophers who give up bivalence. And the extended liar paradox is just a very small change to the original liar paradox. It's just a very small shift, but it raises further problems. So here's the extended liar paradox. Here's the small shift. This sentence is not true. Right? That's the extended liar paradox sentence. This sentence is not true. Remember, the original liar paradox said this sentence is false. This extended liar paradox says this sentence is not true. Now, why is that worse? Well, let's run through the sort of liar paradox argument again, but with the this sentence is not true version. So let's suppose, hypothetically, that the sentence is true, right? Well, then whatever it says about the world must be correct. And what the sentence says about the world is that it itself is not true. So if the sentence is true, then it must be correct when it says that it's not true. So we were wrong to say the sentence was true. If we assume that the sentence is true, then it turns out the sentence is not true. And so the sentence must not be true. Because if you assume hypothetically that it is true, turns out you're wrong. You can prove that you're wrong. So the sentence must not be true. Now, let's suppose, hypothetically, that we say the sentence is false. Well, if the sentence is false, then what it says about the world, the claim that it makes, must be incorrect. The claim it makes about the world must be false. So, what claim does it make about the world? Well, it says that it's not true. So if it's false that the sentence is not true, that means that the sentence is true, right? If it isn't not true, then it must be true. So if we assume the sentence is false, then it turns out that the sentence is true. But if it's true, that means the sentence isn't false, right? It can't be both true and false. It can't be right and wrong. So if the sentence is true, that means it's not false. So we were wrong to say the sentence was false. So if we assume, hypothetically, that the sentence is false, it turns out the sentence is not actually false. We're mistaken. So the sentence can't be false. So we've shown the extended liar sentence can't be true, and we've shown that the extended liar sentence can't be false. So if we give up bivalence, that's fine, because there's a third option, that it's neither true nor false. So let's give that a shot. Let's say the extended liar paradox is neither true nor false. Well, if it's neither true nor false, that means it's not true and it's not false. But if it's not true, well, then what it says is correct, because it says that it's not true. So if it's neither true nor false, then when it says it's not true, it's right. It's correct. It's true that it's not true. But that means that the extended liar sentence is in fact true. So it's not correct to say that it's neither true nor false. And there's the extended paradox. When we look at the sentence, this sentence is not true, which says of itself that it isn't true, then we reach a contradiction, we reach a paradox, we prove ourselves wrong, regardless of whether we say it's true, false, or neither true nor false. And so giving up bivalence isn't enough. Even after we give up bivalence, we're still stuck now. Right? And so that has led some philosophers to think we need to give up something else when faced with the liar paradox. And they say what we need to give up is what's called the law of non-contradiction. It's the idea that sentences can't be both true and false. Right? That's the law of non-contradiction. It says sentences can't be both true and false. Right? So intuitively, the way we normally look at sentences, meaningful declarative sentences have to be either true or false. They can't be both and they can't be neither. But the original liar paradox convinced a lot of philosophers that we were wrong to say they can't be neither. Meaningful declarative sentences can be neither true nor false. But the extended liar paradox has convinced some philosophers that we have to give up the law of non-contradiction and give up the idea that meaningful sentences can't be both true and false. You can say a sentence that is both correct and incorrect. It's both right and wrong. It's true and it's false. And they think the extended liar paradox is an example of that. And that the original liar paradox is an example of that too. So they think when we look at the argument and we say, suppose it's true. Well, what it says is that it's false or that it's not true. Therefore, it turns out to be false. They say, yeah, great. We assumed it was true. We proved it was false. So in that case, it's both true and false. And when we assume it's false, then what it says is wrong. What it says is that it's false, so it must be true. All right, great. We assumed it's false, now it's true, so it's both true and false. No problem there. They think we only reach an issue here if we refuse to accept that some sentences are both true and false. And so they think by giving up the law of non-contradiction, by allowing sentences to be both true and false, then we can avoid the paradox. Now, maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong, maybe that is something we can give up, maybe it's not. Maybe we can't really accept sentences that are both true and false. I mean, try both believing and not believing something. It's harder to do than to say. So maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. All right, so that's all I want to talk about today. So on Thursday, we'll talk about Gricean implicature. And if you have any questions, please let me know. But otherwise, stay safe out there.